Yeah, it can't get us nowhere. Hey, all right, okay. It is Sunday, August
August,
21st,
not October.
2022. Right. I'm already thinking about us winning the election. I'm thinking about October surprises. This is the August surprise. We are here today. Beer in the Conversation, special episode. I've got some of the best panelists in the world. We got Scotty to my left, Rashid to my far left, and in the middle, the man himself, Cesar Gonzalez, candidate for District 13, U.S. House District 13, excuse me. And we kind of pulled this emergency meeting together because we do need change. So this is church after church. The good thing is that it won't cost you no change. You can just listen for free. And housekeeping. I want to say something. Dominique is in the building here. And I want to say this to you, Dominique. First off, thank you for being who you are. Everybody knows I get a little bit off the rails from time to time. And I would never do or say anything to disrespect the sisterhood. Because you are a good sister. You know what I mean? There is an element that is not you, though. And I'm not saying that anybody should be disrespected. Sometimes when I call things out, I call them out. But I appreciate you for calling me out and calling me to the square on things and being there to support me at the same time. So I'm grateful for you. I appreciate you, my sister. Okay?
Yeah, we gonna help each other build and grow.
Exactly. All right. And then, since it is Sunday and we're going to talk about church, I want to remind black pastors that they do have a fiduciary duty to anybody that they get this microphone to say what it is that they back. So if you're backing the Bible, you need to back things that are in the Bible. If you don't want to get in politics, please invoke the Establishment Clause, which is separation of church and state. Say that I am not going to do that because I don't want to have another discussion with y'all about this, and I'm trying to do the right thing as a black man by not calling out other black men about them not doing their jobs. And they say that they represent the Word of God and they support everything that's satanic. All right, with that said, we got Cesar Gonzalez in the house. I'm excited to be here, Cesar. Where do you want to go with it? You want to get with the questionnaire, or do you have something you want to say?
Oh, no. I'm good with the questionnaire and stuff. I'm you put me in a certain mindset with your entry monologue regarding the pastors. As you well know, we have a congressional senator who took the position that was contrary to the principles, Judeo-Christian principles, when he came out as pro-abortion. I'm assuming that's where you were going with this?
Correct. Well, I mean, I'm not even going to bring up today the law, the Colorado state law, that will allow for full gender change on birth certificates if there's proof that the surgery has been done. These are very high levels of deception. And so while I do understand while they say there's a movement that says trans lives matter and they are being harmed, I also understand that's because they're not revealing who that they are. People are not against gay people. People are not against trans people. People are against deception. And it's dangerous when you deal with men. But yeah, to your point about abortion and all of these other things, I really can't find a moral thing that they stand on the other side.
Yeah, not especially since if you look in the community, over 40% of all pregnancies in the black community end in abortion.
Right.
We're at a point to where we're not replenishing what we're losing in the community. So my question to my community is, how are y'all okay with this? And if you're okay with abortion, then explain your remedy for the stagnation and eventual decline of our population?
I think there are a lot of places we can go on that, and I don't want to go super deep, but one thing I would say is that I do believe, and this is conspiracy hat here, I think that the modern environmentalist movement is one that is very much attuned to controlling population, because one of the prime climate change narratives is that if you ever, sometimes you'll see these posters talk about like the things that impact the climate the most. And so like it might be like driving a gasoline car or whatever, but you'll see like at the top you'll see like next to the top you'll see like flying an airplane. At the very top you'll see more humans. Having more humans creates more climate change, and I believe that that is at least partially an impetus for why these types of policies, these population control policies, have gotten a lot of cachet on the left. That's just I've never heard anyone directly say that, but again, I read this survey that said that like they're interviewing Gen Zers and millennials and asking why they didn't have kids, and it was something like, I can't remember the percentage, somewhere between maybe 20 and 40% said climate change.
Unbelievable.
What about the Hispanic community?
I don't. It wasn't.
Did they get the
broken
memo?
out, so.
Did the Hispanic community get the memo?
The Hispanic communities actually doubled in the past 30 years. In 1990, the Hispanic population was about 9% of the country's population. They are now around 19 to 20% of the population. And they actually still take their religion pretty seriously. A lot of them are actually Roman Catholic, and a lot of them don't believe in abortion, and a lot of them don't even believe in birth control. And as far as the black population is concerned, like I said the last time I was here, I strongly believe that a lot of black people have replaced politics as their new religion. God is no longer at the forefront. The black pastor sold out, and this goes way back to the days of Margaret Sanger. And Margaret Sanger says that the Negro population was like a growing weed and it needed to be exterminated. So the population control of black America, like Mr. Gonzalez said here, is actually deliberate.
Absolutely. And they sold us on an idea that was never even, I don't see, if my issue with a lot of people in the black community is not that they have ideas or feelings, because people have the right to have ideas and feelings. But, and I'm not a racist, but I hate it when we imitate white people. You know what I mean? I hate the idea that somebody else gave us an idea.
That's right.
And we run with it. You know what I mean? And they did it right to our detriment. It was a deleterious idea, and it has destroyed us as a community. Oh, it's not that it's about us not replenishing. It's about, because they don't come like that. They show up and they say, girl, you know you got the right to do what you want to do with your body. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They don't sell it for what it is. And we buy it. And this is like, my arguments online with people and in real life are not with the uneducated. Du Bois would be rolling over in his grave when he said the talented 10th. My arguments are with people who have spent $100,000+ in getting education, and they don't understand what's going on. And I have an issue with that.
Well, you have a party, of course, that has taken advantage of that divisiveness, that dividing the community on a philosophical level has empowered them. So they're going to continue to do it. They're dividing black men and black women, and as a result of dividing that and destroying the black family, it has given them political clout, political power. So of course they're going to push it. You know, the thing that astounds me is you have these Democrat politicians like, and I hate to bring her up again, but Stacey Abrams. Her philosophies are going to destroy the black community. She is setting it up to rob black wealth.
Entrepreneurship, definitely.
Entrepreneurship, tax the black community as they have ascended into wealth and prosperity. So what are you doing? You're representing yourself as a black woman going to represent the black community, selling us a bag of goods like you're going to rob us of our achievement and our success, and telling us that it's okay, that you got our backs? How does that work?
But we'll give you a check.
Well, yeah, well, the funny thing is that,
A loaf of cheese.
after we had the episode where I called her a Marxist, I
actually heard that last night, by the way. Not you, but somebody else said that. A white man called her that.
It's easy to say that, but I don't know that I've seen enough direct evidence of it. But what I did do is I did go to her site and I did look at her policies. I don't like being ignorant to those sorts of things, and just looked at them for what they were. And I mean, they're pretty standard left-wing policies that, I don't know, I mean, I don't see anything about tax increases in there. What I did see was, it was stuff like invest in communities of color and then prevent gentrification, which, again, it's very hard to do both of those things. Like, usually when you're investing in these communities, there is an increase in the standard of living that makes it more attractive to people that were not in those communities. And so it's that sort of like cognitive dissonance. And I see it in Biden's platform too, or the general Democrat platform. And so I think that, again, I think there are a lot of reasons to not like Stacey Abrams. And I definitely reserve the right to at some point conclude that she is a Marxist. And I know a lot of people that are like big supporters of her and been supporters for her for years. I've been hearing about Stacey Abrams for many years, and they've all been.
Are they black men though?
No, they're all women. They're all
okay.
Women.
I was just
women,
about to say, I don't,
color, if you will.
Yeah.
And they are almost to the person, at least Democrat socialists, if not outright Marxists and quasi-communists.
But to your point, and then I'll get to the questions. I want to say this, because I know that you're right about what you're saying, because I know what I encounter. You're a little bit more reserved. I'm a little bit more talkative. You've been out with me, and people want to throw tomatoes at me and stuff. Because I will tell it like it is or how I feel. And I think that what the sisters are missing is that anybody who is married to their work is not married to their man. And politicians are two things, especially in the United States. They're not just the head of government, but they're the head of state. And by definition, that means they're a figure, right? If we go to Britain, Great Britain, the UK, they have a prime minister, and then they have who is the head of government, and then they have a head of state, the queen, a figurehead. Right? And so for black men, we do not want to see, Michelle Obama could probably win the governorship hands down, because she represents a woman who has a career, but at the same time understands that to have a good, strong black community, that you have to be a wife and a mother. We're not going to support, and you shouldn't support, and women in general shouldn't support anything that leaves a man out, anything that looks like it represents. See, what Rashid is talking about is a policy issue. What I'm talking about is something much bigger than that. I'm talking about an idea that you do not have to work with the black man to achieve your goals. And that is what we are against.
Do you agree it's a cultural issue?
Absolutely.
There's this disruption of the black culture that started happening in the late 50s, early 60s. The Democrat Party facilitated that change, actually enabled that change and encouraged it because, like I said earlier, it empowered them. You've got a group now that is divided. You've divided black men and black women philosophically, which goes against natural principles. How do you divide people that are supposed to be together, that are culturally together, that are culturally a unit, and expect them to survive?
I couldn't say that.
Really quick.
And going way back prior to the 50s, when you said things started to deteriorate, before integration happened, coming out of slavery during Reconstruction, the black family was actually much more intact, and you had black people had a much higher marriage rate than white people did. And our entrepreneurship, our land ownership was much stronger because we didn't have a choice. And now that we've been given a choice, and unfortunately, it seems that the more educated we get, the more indoctrinated we get. And as you said before,
we pay a high price for poison in our community. Go ahead.
We really do.
Well, if y'all haven't seen it, I highly recommend a documentary called "What Happened to Michael Brown." Has anyone seen that documentary?
No.
It just take a look at it, and it, I think, talks about a lot of the things we talked about, because it's like, no, it's what killed Michael Brown. And obviously a lot of people say, well, the cop killed Michael Brown. But it goes into like the history of St. Louis. It goes into the history of the black community in St. Louis. It goes into some very deep things. And particularly it goes into just what the guy who created Shelby Steele, I'm sure you may have heard of Shelby Steele, a pretty well-known conservative black commentator. He talks a lot about this thing called the poetic truth, which is just that things don't have, like the whole hands up, don't shoot, like Michael Brown never had his hands up or whatever.
Right.
Like, but it's poetic to say, know, that he had his hands up and that the cop just shot him anyway, right? And like creates a narrative. Mm-hmm. And he untangles a lot of that stuff in a way that's really interesting about Ferguson. And again, it's very deeply rooted historically, how they tore down a lot of what they call black slums in order to create housing projects, but those slums were built by black people. Black people had a home base that was theirs. It may not look like the white people stuff. And the last thing I'll say is that, one of the foundational precepts of wokeism is what we talked about earlier, which is that black people have to be like white people. Because that's where the whole equity conversation comes from. Is, so equal to what, right? We say we don't have equity, but what that ultimately is doing is setting a yardstick that is white people. And if black people don't have what white people have, then there's a problem. And I don't think that's the most productive way for us to look at the development of our community.
Because the elder blacks had this mentality that the white man's ice is always colder. And even though, like you said, we had our own stuff, I was just reading about a sister down in FAMU who took a nude photo next to a statue or something. And I said, just think about the disrespect that is showing towards the ancestors who helped build those institutions. Black folks didn't have a choice but to go to HBCUs and live in our own communities and support our own businesses. And like you said, even though we had our own base, it may not have been as nice as the white people stuff. We had our own base.
That's right. And I mean, even when we take it to any other area that we've been given an opportunity to thrive in, and I had this discussion with somebody recently about sports. Again, I have to reiterate, I mean, some of the greatest basketball players and football players and boxers and all of these people come from places where they didn't have nice facilities. It's the human will. There is something very special about us. When Usain Bolt would run those races, he wasn't just running to run, he was running to get out of Kingston. And he knew that if he didn't win, he would say in Kingston. I mean, come on, guys. It's bigger than what we are looking at here. And I for whatever reason, they have, and the serpents have always gone at our women. And so I cannot blame them, because I begin to understand the more that I get scriptural that they go at them for a reason. You know what I mean? And so now I have to go at the men. And with regard to, let's talk about the men. Let's talk about money. Let's talk about men being men and earning money and feeling like a man.
Can I say a quick thing about the women thing?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's as intentional as it looks. I do believe that as the postmodern movement made its way to America during the 60s and 70s, that it was particularly attractive to people who consider themselves to be generally oppressed. That would be women, that would be LGBT, that would be black folk. And that this whole idea has very much taken root and has been very popular, particularly in academia, because that's where it came from. And I think that what's happened as a result of a lot of these things that happened in the 60s, where there was a lot of social resources used toward building up women, and obviously black women are black and they're women, and it's results
double
of what we
minorities.
see now. What we see now, where there are way more black women are graduating from college than men. Women are just more exposed to that. Women are just more in college, and they're more exposed to those. I was exposed to those ideas, and I hate to admit it, but it had me for a year or two. And I get it, like it makes you feel smart. It makes you feel like you have the answer to everything. And more importantly, when it comes to black people, and probably these other groups I talked about as well, it gives you a convenient scapegoat for everything that's fucked up in your life. you know, and it's very much the type of substitution for God and for religion and for faith that I think a lot of people are looking for, because as people get more educated, they tend to become more secular. And so what do you have at that point? All right, I'm done.
No. Me and you, we're gonna come back to that. But you not only are you spot on, but I learned something in this process too, as a so-called educated Negro. And what I've actually found is a secret, and I want to share it. I think I'll save it for next week's show. But it's a big secret, and what's happened is that women who are super educated actually find themselves happier with blue collar men. It's a secret. It's not because they're less than, it's because they're just men.
Masculinity. You know?
And the same thing, my life has been enhanced by a woman who's just a worker. I go out with a girl that's an attorney, or an entrepreneur, or has an MBA. I have more problems than I could have ever imagined. But if I get somebody that's just a worker, maybe scholastically we can't talk about Beowulf, right? But my life, the peace, woo, okay, all right.
Yeah, I had to co-sign on that. And again, the problem is that, like, I've dated lots of doctors and lawyers and that sort of stuff, and the problem is that they just tend to think that we're uncomfortable with them because of their brilliance and their success, and maybe some are, like, I can't speak for all men, maybe some men are intimidated, but that does not intimidate me at all. I just see empty shells of a human being.
All right, I got to throw a lifeline out to those intellectual females out there.
I'm not saying they're all like that.
Yeah, you got to admit the conversation is colorful, the conversation is fulfilling, but you're looking at a situation where any kind of disagreement in terms of philosophies leads to what? In our current society, we have come away from those skill sets, give me a word, those
competencies.
What is it? And that brings in another thing. Conflict.
Vocation.
Conflict management.
Conflict management is a good one. Dealing
cooperation.
Cooperation,
So
because I'll be the first to tell
I agree
you.
with you.
I will be the first to tell you. If you're not open to dissenting opinion, you'll never learn anything new.
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
And we as a society have pulled away from that. It's now, if you don't agree with me, you don't agree with my principles, you are my enemy, which couldn't be any further from the truth. And what we're doing is we're pulling ourselves away from an academic mindset to one of conflict.
And I think that's fair. And I think that's actually probably that's a stain of, I think, radical leftism and Marxism, which is very much about conflict. And it's very much about finding things to complain about. And again, like I say, when the only tool we have is a hammer, everything
that
is
was
like
clever
a nail.
finding.
And so I think there is a bigger social decay where people can't disagree on stuff. And I think black women tend to be very liberal. And again, because politics has become a lot of their religion, then a lot of these political disagreements, I can't tell you how many people are like, I can't even be friends with someone who votes for Trump.
Conflict has become their love language, actually, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you don't love them if you won't fight with them.
Terrible way to explain it.
It literally is a cult. Remember I talked to y'all about Jonestown. This is the modern day Jones. They are drunk off the Kool-Aid.
Right.
And they love it. And if you don't want the Kool-Aid, you don't want this? Are you crazy? You know how good this Kool-Aid is?
Exactly.
Well, but I think part of it is we as, not even necessarily men, but in this very specific way, I think we have to be better at managing conflict ourselves and really understanding and having the principles and being able to speak to those principles clearly. Because I got to tell you, when I've run into conflict like this, I know why these policies are bullshit. You know what I'm saying? I know why all these statistics you throw at me are inaccurate. And more importantly, I know history, and I know where these policies have gone historically. And so, and again, there's a deeper spiritual element to being able to speak to that stuff as well. And I think that's that is something I see is just missing, is that a lot of times it's like an overeducated person who understands that knows all these factoids that aren't nearly as true as they think, against
But-
someone who just hasn't spent time with it.
knows
can win
nothing
it.
about crisis management. It's
Right.
like, oh, okay, well, if you disagree with me, I'm going to shoot y'all up. And, come on, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's a
They-
bigger cultural
right.
problem.
They could win an academic quiz bowl.
Sure.
But I think, like you said, when it comes to scripture and spirituality, I just think that we as black men, we have to stand firm on our foundational principles that made us who we are. Because the black society that you see today is so far deviated away from who we used to be.
But where would they get those foundational principles from?
Who when you say
Black
they?
men.
Well, I mean, black men, we have.
Where would we get those foundational principles from?
Well, according to the statistics, 80% of black people identify as Christian. Identify. I don't mean we living like it.
Yeah,
But
but I'm saying,
I'm
I'm with you, my brother. I'm saying, like, if you don't see no black man in the home, where are you getting your foundational principles as a man? You know what I mean?
Black fathers absent. Yeah, the breakdown of the black family is the number one issue in our
They
society.
getting shot and killed by the police because they behaving like women.
Emotional. That's right.
And they're watching how. If I played clips of what happens with black women and the police, because what's actually happening is the police have now taken a firm stance on handling black women differently. And I mean in a very physical manner.
That who gonna check me, boo?
It's now that's over with. So it becomes now there was a lag, right? And what happened was black men who grew up under their mothers seeing the way that did you see y'all saw the stuff in Atlanta
The girl at the park.
where he said sign the ticket.
Yeah. The girl
And
at the
she
park.
said yeah. She said no, I ain't got to sign
But
that.
the man
And he-
signed his. She didn't sign. But he was a beta male. He should have intervened and said, "Shut your mouth and sign this ticket so we can go home."
And then she said, okay, the cop said, I'm going to arrest her. And then she said, okay, well, I'll sign it. And he said, that's not an option anymore.
Right, you had your chance. Yeah, I saw it.
And so what I'm saying is that if young boys are learning how to deal with authority from people who do not really pay true consequence that would be congruent to what the consequence that black men get from resistance to authority.
Hold on.
they're gonna
So
find
what
themselves-
you're saying is people that don't respect authority. They're getting their guidance from people that don't respect authority, and then they're turning it around now to where it is accepted practice that somehow the cloak of social justice is going to protect somebody when they decide they want to put hands on somebody with a gun.
Nope.
Exactly.
I mean, like he just said, look at who they're learning from. As men, we're supposed to be led by our logic. Women are led by emotion. That's just the natural order of things.
Okay.
And when you're dealing with the police are there just to enforce the law. Like the old saying goes, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So you live to fight another day. You battle that issue out in court.
Right.
I done interacted with the police plenty of times.
Me and you, every black man
and
has.
never in my life has a police physically punched me or had to
That's right.
throw me on the ground or threaten to shoot me or none of that because I complied.
Right.
Well, in our
Yeah,
hood,
exactly.
and of course I was on the street.
Always the case though.
I actually have been
something
physically
else.
handled one time, but yeah.
Hey.
yeah.
Nah, like it been times where like
I mean, every now and
Yeah,
then.
well, the point is that it's not the norm.
Right.
Like a lot of these social, they would make you
99.9% of
think
the
that.
time.
Yeah, they make you think that every time a black person runs into the cop, they
Right,
get their ass kicked.
and like
And it-
LeBron James told us on Twitter a while ago, we're black men are being hunted by the
Right.
police.
Michelle
Every
Obama
day
said
they
that
wake
too.
up trying to find a black person to murder.
Well,
These
I'm
black-
going to ask
these
y'all a
cops have
question.
much more to worry about. Sorry,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
ask you a question then. If it is pervasive, common knowledge that the police are after black folk, why are we engaging them?
Right? Why are we
Hey,
trying?
in my hood, when I was growing up in my hood, we had a policy of yes, no, okay, goodbye. So when the man came around and we was in the game and stuff, the first thing we thought about was getting this guy out of here.
Exactly.
Answer his
Keep the block
questions.
cool.
Yes, no, okay, goodbye. Let him go. And now we have a community that actually wants to not only engage these people, but actually put hands on these people. And I'm mystified. How do you think you can put hands on somebody with a gun and not expect to get shot?
Right.
Notice I didn't say police.
Yeah, that's a fair
Right.
point. That's a fair point.
You know, when did that, when was that okay? When was that acceptable in our communities?
I think social media has a lot to do with it. They seeing all these video clips and they think they can do it too. And while we're on that subject, Mr. Gonzalez, you from New York, what is your thoughts? Do you think, how do you feel about stop and frisk? Because a lot of people here in
And
the
we've
Atlanta,
dealt with it.
a lot of people here in the Atlanta area are saying that because of the crime and everything that we may need to do that. Of course, we're going to have a lot of outrage from the social justice warriors. But what do you think about stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, if I'm walking in the hood and I got the man pulling up and telling me, asking me if I got a weapon, and he's going to put hands on me looking for a weapon, I'm going to get in my feelings. On the other hand, it's hard to argue the crime statistics, which suggests that in areas where stop and frisk was employed, you had a decrease in the number of encounters involving guns.
So let's go.
All right,
ahead.
look, I
How
got to
do-
get libertarian on this one because we do have a constitution that does have a Fourth Amendment about unreasonable searches and seizures.
Yeah.
And statistics ain't enough. Because the fact is this, and this is where like a lot of stuff goes off the rails, is that we know there's disproportionate crime in the black communities, disproportionate murders and all these things.
Violent
But the
crime.
fact of the matter is that those are committed by like 5% of the population. You know what I'm saying? I don't know that I can accept any random black person. And again, yeah, it's certainly there's a spatial piece to it too, right? Like I'm sure a black person in Buckhead may not necessarily be dealing with that. But
But Rashid, I got to play the devil's advocate.
oh,
though.
please do. I mean, I'm playing the devil's
You
advocate,
said
so.
that you brought up a great point. You said that the crime is disproportionate in the
Yes.
black community.
Yes.
We are 13.6% of the population, according to the U.S. Census Bureau.
That's right.
But we make up half
Murders.
of the nation's homicides
Yep.
and half of the nation's homicide victims.
That's right.
Is that not egregious?
It is egregious.
A lot of that's
but
crimes
it
of
is
survival,
spatial,
though, but yeah,
it is
go ahead.
spatial. There are not every black.
13% though, bro?
Yeah. So look, your point is very well taken. But again, it's a spatial thing. It's a geospatial thing, which is just to say that like that's not something that like again that's like 1% of black communities.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Where a lot of this crime emanates from.
Let's talk about 13th District. Let's talk about it. This is why we're here. Now we're going where we need to go. How do we build the rising crime out of the 13th District? I tend to believe that most crime in the black community are crimes of survival. So how do we build the rising crime out of the 13th District?
See, and there's where you come into my platform and what I stand for. You know, I grew up in the hood, okay, and I saw the problems. I was actually on the streets. And what I saw, and what I see today, as a matter of fact, because nothing's really changed, is that when you give a young person in our community no guidance, you basically turn him out on the street, and he's trying to get his needs met, you know, meet his ends. Okay, he's going to do what he has to do that. If that means, okay, breaking in his car because I see something that I could flip and get this little bit of money, well, that's what he's going to do. My proposal is to engage that community and give them a sense of direction, a sense of self-worth. If you give somebody a skill set to where they can go out, for example, I know we hear this a lot, but for example, welding. My last welding job, I made $50 an hour. If you give a young soldier an opportunity to make that kind of money, give him the skill sets he needs, what you think he's going to do? You think he's going to leave his mama and get locked up because he's trying to meet his ends? Or is he going to, with that skill set, go out there, lock into this job, make this clear money to where when he lays his head on a pillow at night, he knows he's not going to leave his mom all by herself because he's got to be locked up?
Right.
He'll be able to afford the lifestyle that he would appreciate or she would appreciate, not have to worry about the jump outs coming after him, not worry about leaving his family or her family to get locked up, to get in the system, to be sat down.
Okay, so basically that really does, to the point, address the plan on addressing housing and homelessness, because if you fix that, then you fix the housing and homelessness issue, and you also address these.
Hold on. Hey. There you go with that.
Yeah,
Go
look,
ahead.
man, I've done a lot of work with homeless people in this city, and they have substance abuse problems. Most of the people on the street aren't there because they.
Well, shit, Rashid. I mean, hell. I mean, how the hell they gonna sleep at night? They got to be high to sleep on the concrete. I mean,
Look, a lot of them were. A
And
lot of
urine
getting
on
high is what
concrete,
got
too.
them on the concrete. So I'm just saying, like, I don't know if it's a silver bullet. I'm not saying it's a bad policy. I'm just saying we might be overblowing the blast radius a little bit. That's
Okay,
all I'm saying.
okay, all right. I'll walk with you for a second. But it also addresses the question about skilled labor, 2.8% in District 13, and your policy. How does it address that? We believe that, to your point, vocational, and we've talked about vocationals. You just said it, a skill set. Booker T. Washington. Do you know who Booker T. Washington is?
Of course.
Well, you remember his famous address, Rashid? Do you remember that?
The Atlanta Compromise, cast down your bucket.
What did he say? Let them work with their hands.
Yeah, I mean, Booker T. Washington was definitely, we're cut from the Booker T. Washington cloth.
Okay.
Not the W.E.B. Du Bois.
Correct.
Communists leaving America to go to Africa. The boy went way off the fucking reservation or chain or whatever. Anyway,
Yeah,
sorry.
the top 10 are the ones that's fucking us up. Excuse my language. Sorry,
Oh,
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah,
We got a
I don't think that.
politician here.
I don't think that necessarily is a bad idea. But I mean, we do recognize that there is a 80-20 rule. It means that 20% of your population is responsible for 80% of your production. So there is a leadership class in whatever attribute you want to measure. That doesn't mean the other 80% is worthless. But what he's getting after is the idea that, like, yes, there is an elite, and those elite have an outsized responsibility to the community.
That's
Yeah.
funny you would use that number. One number of studies have been done on homelessness, and they talk about homelessness is 20% economic and 80% mental illness and chemical dependency.
Yeah.
So that's an
Totally
interesting statistic that you would bring
Well,
up.
one day we'll do a statistical. Like that 80-20 is almost a magical number, and it shows up in a lot of different places around our society.
So, you know, to bring it into addressing homelessness, how do you address homelessness without addressing mental illness
Yeah,
and chemical
that's
dependency?
the thing.
You know, we've got federal funds coming into the district to address homelessness, indigent families.
But in the 13th, what's happened to those funds, though?
Well,
Dilapidated sidewalks and all of that. And,
Well-
and what has happened?
I
to your knowledge?
hesitate to speak on this because, you know, certain people
responsible.
get in their feelings when I say they're stealing the money. So I won't say that.
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm just saying what happened
No,
to the
I
money.
said that.
Oh,
I
okay,
said
okay,
that.
yeah.
I'm going to say they reallocate the funds to those issues which are more important to them being, of course, the politicians and the officials. It's just funny that $11 million would be allocated to address homelessness and indigent families in a South Atlanta suburb, and it would go to a slideshow.
Damn.
A slideshow.
I mean, yeah, paying off cronies. I mean, that's
You know, so, you know, we're looking out there. We've got an incumbent who talks about bringing $15.5 billion into the district, and we're looking around and saying, where is it? $15.5 billion. That would
That's a lot
cut
of
a
money.
check of over $21,000 for every man, woman, and child in the district. So you saying with that kind of money, you cannot uplift the community?
And that's just federal funding, by the way.
That's just federal, exactly.
wow. That is nuts.
You know, and it would be fine. You know, I understand they got their Atlanta politics. When I question them, they say, well, you know, that's Atlanta politics. That's how things are done and everything. But have you looked at the squalor driving down Tara Boulevard in Jonesboro? And I remember driving down that same boulevard 20 years ago, and it was very different. Now it's stark. What else has happened in the last 20 years? In the last 20 years, we had an incumbent representative that has basically ignored the community because, well, they don't vote. So I'm going to orient my concerns to viable voters.
I mean, I'm going to keep it 100 with you. I used to live on Tower Boulevard in Jonesboro, and 30 years ago, driving down Tower Boulevard, it was nice, but you would also see fully clothed members of the Ku Klux Klan gathering donations on the median at Tower Boulevard and Morrow Industrial Boulevard. It's changed a lot down there.
Relevance to the money, Rashid.
It was 1991, huh?
What's the relevance to the money?
Yeah, no, the point is just, I mean, you're just talking about how things, or what has and hasn't happened, and what has changed in over this time period. And I mean, I'm sure the Klan ain't out there fully dressed right now.
Nah, they ain't trying to.
So clearly there's some significant changes down there that ain't just money.
Yeah, Klan goes through there, it's about to go down.
Yes.
I mean, I went to high school in Stone Mountain.
They used to be out
That's the
there.
headquarters.
I mean, that's when
they
they
were
founded, but they have not had a big presence in Stone Mountain in a long time.
Shit.
Definitely not in
Actually, it
91.
wasn't that long ago that they was out there, and they decided that they would just have an organization an organized rally on the top of the mountain, and the brothers went out there and they stopped it. I
Took care of that.
Look, I don't care about the Klan doing rallies. Like when they start really like physically fucking with black people, that's when I start caring. You know what I'm saying? But I do believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. And we start letting people shit on that thing, it opens up a lot of cans of worms that will impact black people very
far
disproportionately.
more, right? Correct.
But to segue back to the situation in the 13th District, particularly on Tower Boulevard, Jonesboro, in the last 20 years, the economic change had little, if anything, to do with racism and everything to do with economics. When you have an economic downturn and you have a governmental apparatus that does not invest in its community, they invest in themselves, you have this net decay. Okay, and I had to interject here because a lot of conversations that we have, we want to throw in the race column, we want to throw in the white supremacist boogeyman. I'll be honest with you, I've lived in the South over 30 years. I have not met a single white racist boogeyman.
Wow.
I have, and they were very inconsequential to my life.
Yeah.
I have too, but they haven't never.
Typically, they stay away from us. They don't.
Right, they don't like. They don't.
Yeah.
They want to stay away from black people. But I agree with Rashid 1,000% that the white supremacist is not this giant albatross hanging around the necks of black people that's holding us down. Like,
right. That's why you have terminology called white flight. That means they get the fuck out of the neighborhood once we start moving in.
Look, they go 40 and 50 miles away. They ain't gonna follow us way out here.
But what you have this corruption within our own community, especially amongst our elected officials, that when their corruption is exposed, their response is to alarm the community with this white racist boogeyman. He's in your closets. He's under your bed. He's out to get you.
Let me tell you
while
something.
they packing their pockets.
And I want to caption the hell out of this, JoJo, for the record. The Democrats could tell black people to take a spoon and eat dog shit off of the ground. And then Republicans could say, that's a bad idea. And the Democrats can say they're racist. And then they would just go into a trance where they just would walk and start eating dog shit. Because they don't have a policy, dog. They don't have a policy.
But you know,
all they do is throw around racism.
You know why?
They have
you know why the
shitty
Democrats
policies.
keep doing the policy of racism? Because it keeps fucking working. Y'all Negroes keep dancing to the beat of their drum and voting for them at a rate of 90% every election cycle, and they know it. That's why I said we are a political booty call to the Democrat Party.
I feel like a broken record when I say if a party draws power from racism, then there must always be racism to draw power from. You have a government that spent over $2 trillion to combat racism in the last 50 plus years, and we're here. You know, I can't help but think that maybe there's something else here. Maybe there's something within the community. Maybe there are issues within the culture of our community that needs to be addressed. We need introspection.
Too emotional.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was at Del Frisco's down there in Buckhead, and this is real talk, man. And this young black guy was there. Actually, I'm a young black guy, but he was younger than me.
You are.
and he wanted to come in, and he said it was a white female manager there, and he wanted to come in, and he was like, I want to, he's like, I need to come in. He's like, it was hot outside. He said, I want a glass of water. And then she said, no. And she's like, water's for paying customers. She's like, yeah, but water's free. And I ain't intervening. I wanted to be like, actually, water is not free, but I didn't say nothing. I let them continue to talk. And then what I'm afraid of, he said, he's like, you're just not letting me in because you're racist. And she said, no, I'm not racist. It's like, water, you can have as much water as you want if you're a paying customer at the restaurant.
Some money.
But here's the point. He defaulted to racism. This guy had to be like 25, 26 perhaps. And then she goes and starts explaining to me and my guest, like, I am not racist. And I'm like, damn, them white folks, they got to be tired of having to explain themselves.
That piece is going to run out, too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, but Joe Biden and them are going to keep saying racism because it works. I said racism like Allen Iverson did in that practice commercial. Practice. I think I said that shit.
About racism?
Racism?
Not a game.
It's racism.
Not work. Racism.
It's racism.
Well, because it works.
It's racism.
But it works. Say racism and everybody backs
just
up.
stop.
To segue off of something you said, the water's free. I'm looking at this recent bill that was signed.
Well, I have a water bill at home that'll tell you that water's not free, but go ahead. Yeah.
Water itself is free, but you have infrastructure.
Right.
That is not free.
There's a lot of black people that work for the water company that need to get paid. So, but go ahead. I'm not going to go there today. I ain't going to do it.
You have this economic package that's being touted out there, and it's a little more than a Green New Deal repackaged as Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm looking at it and I'm laughing. I look on Twitter and I see they're arguing about that. Well, we need a free source of energy and sunlight is free. And as an engineer, I'm looking at this and saying, wait a minute, but the infrastructure needed to harness this energy isn't.
Yes.
How do you think that's free? How do you think infrastructure is free? And these poor minds of mush have bought into this idea that somehow we should have free energy because, gosh, sunlight is free, wind is free. And I'm like, and this is what bureaucrats are telling you about our energy infrastructure. How about asking an engineer? You know? But I digress.
Hold on. So I agree. I mean, it's funny that like the idea of like subsidizing all these millions of electric cars is not going to create more demand on the grid and not drive up the price of electricity. That's a whole other thing. But we're talking about Booker T. Washington. I just had to share this quote from Booker
Let's
T.
do it.
Oh, please do.
There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs.
See,
1911.
see,
Booker T. Washington.
you see,
And you know what? Like the old saying goes, nothing ever changes. If we were to get the mass of black people employed, restore the black family, and just have a normal functioning black society, a lot of them talented 10th Negroes would be out of work.
exactly. Exactly. And that's why they fight me so much about my idea about vocational training, because vocational training, you give a young soldier a skill set, it makes them independent.
All right. So here's my thing. I'm not opposed to what you're saying at all. I guess my thing is this, because I always go through this, because I'm always trying to think of like what
Yeah,
can we do?
I'm with you.
And the problem, I can completely accept the idea that your group will help these kids in school become productive citizens. The question is just always, and again, it kind of comes from the homeless question, is like, what do we do for the ones that have escaped from that system with low skills, low social aptitude, low levels of being able to take personal responsibility? Like, how do we help them? And I get the vocational thing can be applied even to them, but it's like the whole like, so I can't remember, it was Wisconsin or something like that, where they did there's this whole thing about these factories workers and these coal workers that are out, and there's this whole they want to retrain them as like HVAC technicians and stuff like that. And then I listen to the interviews of these guys and I'm like, nigga, I've been doing this for 35 years. I ain't about to learn some whole new thing and start from scratch and at minimum wage and that sort of thing. So I'm just curious about your thoughts on that. And I'm just curious about what you think about
Interesting.
I don't know that there's a good answer to it. I'm just curious.
The answer is huge. I don't think we have enough time for it today, but I will point out several things.
Jojo, can we go 5 minutes over?
I got another show right after.
How much? What kind of leeway we got?
Got like 5 minutes.
All right.
They should be coming in anyway.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
All right,
Go ahead.
so I'll make it quick. Okay, I did taught GED math in jail, and the students that I was teaching this math, these were everywhere from young to middle-aged men. And they, why I got to know about this? Why do I got to know about x plus 4 equals 8, x equals 4 type stuff? That serves no purpose to me. So you have to orient the teaching environment to the interests of the pupil.
Sure.
In order for it to be absorbed. Whereas you have most teaching institutions, they teach from a position of, I'm in the know and you're not, and I'm going to impart this wisdom onto you because I'm the greatest. Mm-hmm. I'm the know-all. And that's what our current educational institutions have come to.
I agree.
You have this liberal elite who are teaching our young children on the premise that they are the last word in wisdom, and they're not. And so certainly you're looking at, to go back to the vocational training, you're looking at the interests of the pupil. Certainly somebody who's interested in being a chef is not going to be interested in auto repair.
Right.
And the same thing works as far as academics. You don't have people who specialize in mathematics that are going to be all too concerned about the sociological condition of our communities or our nation states.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it sounds like just highly specialized learning. Like, instead of because again, if I'm like 40 years old and I ain't doing shit with my life or whatever, but if there's a place I can go maybe for like 6 weeks to like learn how to be a mechanic or learn how to, it could be HVAC or whatever. The idea is that, but I guess, you know what, let's continue this conversation later because I don't
Okay.
No, we're good. Dr. Babbage is
We only
here.
got a few minutes left.
Yeah. Can we get Dr. Babbage a mic so she can go ahead and...
Here, just
Close
take
us
my
up.
seat, because it'll take a while.
Dr. Lisa Babbage in the house, and thank you very much.
We got royalty here.
Yeah.
Oh my.
We do need to know. There was a question about. And I know who I told you. First off, I'm Laris. You've never met me in person.
Hello.
Hello. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
District 7.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There was a big question by somebody that's willing to work with you about your stance on immigration.
Well, it's very complicated. So just to abbreviate it, I really believe, as a daughter of an immigrant, we have to do something humane with the people that are already here. But then we also have to look strategically, logistically at what's happening on our border. And we have to put a temporary halt to make sure that the people who are here have what they need to live that American dream, to have the best life. You know, kids who have been in school, for example, I remember what it was like to go down to the immigration office and help my aunt and uncle fill out the paperwork. You know, my father came here legally, but my mother's second husband did not. You know, what is an illegal immigrant? So we have to treat children humanely. You know, they are not throwaways. They are escaping hell in many cases, and we've been blessed and we take for granted what we have in this country. However, you know, that being said, we do have to be strategic about folks who are still coming in. So my plan would be to have, you know, a dual program, if you will. So we deal with, you know, individuals who are here humanely. Obviously, the criminal element is different from the impoverished element, the escaping hell on earth element. And, you know, America is blessed and we need to be a blessing to those people. However, I do think we need a moratorium at the border so that we can figure out who's in our house. You know, I think that we need to put a stop, no questions asked, to the criminal element that's coming across this border, because they are jumping in line for people who really want the system to be able to work for them.
That's right.
So, depending on, you know, the country of origin, that's a factor. You know, people from Latin America, for example, they will assimilate faster given the chance than someone from China, for example, who has no idea what freedom is all about. Right there. You know, my father came from Australia. They will assimilate even faster than someone from Latin America because there is a common language, there is a common history in that British connection. We need to look logically at a lot of the immigration cases that we have, because we're not going to solve the world's problem in America. I do believe that certain countries, you know, depending on where, you know, wars and rumors of wars are happening, we need to have places that can fix the problem there. You know, everybody doesn't have to come to your house to have their problem fixed. Some people can be fixed where they are by interventions, you know, foreign policy that is actually empowering the people there, rather than saying, everybody come to America, let's squeeze into the spare bedroom, let's go ahead and cut up the peanut butter jelly sandwiches in more slices and see if that satisfies. That does not satisfy. Many people who come here are only coming here out of necessity. They really don't want to be here. Let them stay where they are, and let's see if we can fix some of the problems where they are. Those who do want to come here, Statue of Liberty says, send me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. So I think it's a very complex issue. I think we have to have compassion and empathy, but we do need a stopgap on our border to see what's happening.
Dr. Babbage, I think that's wonderful, and I think you really kind of slapped a grand slam on this discussion with that. Final question.
Okay.
And I'll let y'all take it out. You and Caesar, it's a pleasure to be in y'all's presence. District 13, District 7, U.S. House. Vote for Cesar Gonzalez. Vote for Dr. Lisa Babbage. I think that we're looking at it the right way. The biggest thing, black people, let's remember, while we do want the world to be right, we want to be homogeneous as a community and self-sustaining. If immigration is allowed to continue to be free-flowing, what does that look like? If you can give me maybe 30 seconds apiece. What does immigration look like for the black community in terms of being a power voting bloc and also in terms of blue-collar work?
My quick and dirty answer is this. Black America will be overrun by immigration if we do not stand up as the power bloc that we should be. We built this nation, and we deserve proper accolades for doing so, which means immigration needs to halt until we get our inner cities worked out, to be honest with you.
Okay, well, if you note the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which will allow immigrants to vote, we have, you know, the other tenets of the act, which are to the detriment of the black community. It will marginalize the black vote. Okay, and this is speaking from a child of immigrants, first generation. We need to put American interests first. We need to put the concerns of the black community, who are the Americans, before we start addressing immigrant issues. I'm a proponent of immigration reform, but in order to engage in realistic immigration reform, you must first secure the border.
Deal with your own household, and that's us.
All right, thank you. We'll see you on Thursday. Appreciate you guys coming out.